Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Sceptic Podcast. I'm really honored to have my guest today. When I say that, I really mean it. He's one of the biggest, I would say he's one of the biggest names in the underground disclosure community, and that's Gene Decode. Tonight, I wanted to kind of go all over the place with Gene about underground bases and dumbs, kind of current events and geopolitics, exopolitics and disclosure. We might get into frequency warfare and psyops or wherever he wants to go, and that might tie into ancient civilizations, off-world connections, and he's literally the cutting edge of alternative research. And like I said, Gene Decode has been one of the most talked about researchers in the underground disclosure community, known for his extensive research into hidden infrastructure, global operations, and the deeper layers behind world events. And I'll read his bio. So Ko Sensei Gene is a 20-year veteran of the U.S. Navy submarine fleet. He's a 40-year martial arts instructor, sensei, as well as a lifelong student and practitioner of naturopathic medicine. He has dedicated most of his life to the investigation and research of information pertaining to all things spiritual, health, physical, mental, and emotional, social, political, and metaphysical. He was born with the skilled remote viewing and psychic abilities that have steered his life. In August of 1990, Gene had an epiphany, which he suddenly realized the existence of the massive influence of the satanic deep state cabal. Gene immediately began massive research and to disprove this. However, everything he found only made it more obvious. And we'll get more into it. And you can find the rest of it on his website. And it's instead of me reading the whole bio, and you can find him. It's at genedecode.org. And with all that said, I'd like to give him a big warm welcome back to the show. Gene, thanks so much for coming back on, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah. So I don't mean we haven't met in a couple months. Like, what's your whole what do you think is going behind the scenes with current events? Like, with everything with Iran and Israel, and I mean, where do you stand with all this? And like, is there like hidden stuff going on that we might not know about?
Yeah, so the big hidden thing is that, people, the general media, mainstream knows that King Charles, Camilla, and Beatrice came from the UK to DC to see Trump. They don't know all the symbology and everything attached to it and what it meant, which is, for me, the biggest thing there is out there going on. I've done this on two other interviews, so I did it on Upfront and the Prophetic, and I did it on Captain Kyle. So Upfront and the Prophetic was yesterday. So I'll just kind of, people can go there for the full uptake on what I said. But the big thing is that the king abdicated his throne to Trump. That's the symbol of him being the beekeeper and going to the bees at the White House, had a little White House beehive. It was kind of cute. And Trump had a bee land on his hand, which means the bees recognize him as a royalty. So the king is, abdicated his throne. And also they went to all of the various, like 911 Memorial and all the various places and did all the rites, Masonic rites, handshakes, words, symbols, symbology, etc., to turned back the sovereignty of the United States so that the crown does not have sovereignty over the U.S. anymore as per the Organic Act. And so now we have sovereignty as men and women in the U.S., and we are protected by the Constitution, and we are now, our government is being run by the Constitution, not by Admiralty law. And so that is really, really huge. And then at the dinner, they had it for dessert. They had a kind of beehive looking thing with honey over it. And they had caramels with honey and all kinds of things. So a lot of bee symbology. And of course, there's on social media, he did the beekeeper. And, for people that don't understand the symbology of that, watch the movie, The Beekeeper. And that's really powerful. And then with that, when the king didn't leave. Beatrice left commercial. She got an Uber and loaded her own luggage. The Uber driver up at the tailgate, she loaded her luggage. I mean, and then Camilla also went commercial. And they showed her going through the airport. She had an escort of security, but she's going through the regular commercial airline route, so she's not royalty anymore. She's just a regular, peon, like what they looked at us as. And so the British royalty is actually dead. So that is really, really huge. And of course, just to lightly cap over what's going on with Iran, that is continuing. They're still not wanting, and Trump's not wanting to come to the table under their terms at all. It has to be 100% under the terms of the U.S. and the alliance and Trump. And so with that happening, it's because it's like kind of there's a general in charge, but kind of not. So it's not a lot of, who's in charge. And so, he doesn't want to bomb him back to the Stone Age or off the face of the earth, as he said. But, he's given them a deadline. And so that, is still waiting if they will, turn over and abdicate the uranium and all the other stuff. So that's another item that I've covered already. The one I haven't covered is the Southern Poverty Law Firm, the SPLC. And so that's really huge. So what's going on with that? I haven't covered that anywhere, actually, not even on my website. And so what that is they were set up to, to end racism, like the Ku Klux Klan and all of these things. And so what happened is they were funding them. So it's very much the deep state playbook. Create the problem, create the reaction to the problem, like Black Lives Matter. They're, involved with that and funding that and supporting the groups. And then you come out with a solution. So you're ensuring your business has a continual income, and they were laundering money that way as well. So of course that's illegal, a violation of the RICO Act and many other things. And so it also turns out that the Southern Poverty Law Firm is underneath Open Society of George Soros, and that's underneath the Crown. So I mean, there we go back to Britain. And so for people that really don't understand all this, the things you got to watch are the executive orders. And there's a platform called Promethean Action, and they have weekly updates. And there's Susan Kokinda, one of the two gals, the other one's Barbara Boyd, just did a hour-long show with a guy. I can't remember what platform that was on, but let me see. It's on YouTube. I'll pull it up and tell people. But that is really, really powerful. And she explains all of this stuff about what's going on in the world and, all of that stuff. So it's really important to understand that. So she does a really good recap on all of what's going on and everything. So that was on PBD podcast.
Oh, I'm a big fan. I watch that. I'm a fan of him. I'm a fan of his. It's kind of like a more mainstream, but like they go into the woo a little bit too. I like him. Yeah. That's Patrick Bet David, right?
Yes, and it was kind of interesting watching him because he asked questions that show he doesn't have a lot of idea what's going on, or maybe he's looking like that. I don't know which. So it was really interesting to see her response, which was so eloquent, and she is so knowledgeable. My gosh, she's off the chart and incredibly good at speaking. Just a brilliant speaker, brilliant lady. Both her and Barbara Boyd are, but Susan Kokinda is just beyond belief. Smooth, well delivered, extremely well read and researched. She always recommends books that are just, wow, she has read a lot of books. And she recently did mentioned a book called All the Houses. What's the title? Let me think a second, Holden. All the Queen's presidents, going back to the last Queen of England, how she manipulated, except for Trump, all of our presidents. And even when Bush and I always have trouble remember his name, the Green New Deal guy that came out, he actually won the election, but then the Queen got involved and said, turn it over to Bush and declare that it was miscounted. And anyway, she goes into that on that interview. It's darn.
Let me
Al Gore. I think it's Al Gore. So anyway, that's a lot of important things that people may not understand. So that the Southern Poverty Law Center is actually under the British Empire, under the Crown Corporation, under a subsidiary of the Crown Corporation through the Soros Open Society, through many other interconnections down to the Southern Poverty Law Center. And they are another item that came up. People may not know is that, Trump summoned the king. That's why he didn't leave. There's tribunals, and they went through tribunals, all of them, Beatrice and Camilla. They were allowed to leave. The king was not. That's a clone. The original actually died of kuru from eating, human brains, in other words. So,
wow.
Yeah, so that's a deadly disease. Comes from eating that too often and too much. And so the king is dead. Long live the King Trump. So hallelujah for that.
I got a question for you about
Yes.
I don't know if you've covered this yet in other interviews, but I know this you go into this territory, and I'm sure you have an opinion on it. It's I'm kind of mash some things together here. Like, okay, like the government's talking about major disclosure right now as far as like UFOs. Like they're saying Trump's going to release the UFO files any day, but at the same time we have lots of scientists disappearing, which you saw, and then we also had the death of David Wilcock, where Carrie Cassidy, she's tying in that David Wilcock, she thinks he was working for, like reverse engineered craft, and she basically considers him another missing scientist. Like, do you have an opinion on all this and stuff? And like, from the government wanting to release disclosure, supposedly, I mean, I think they even have a site, it's like aliens.gov or something like that, which I was like, that's weird. I was like, but I mean, I'm all for it though if they really want to disclose it. But yeah, wherever you'd like to go with that, if you have an opinion.
Yes, Kerry's probably pretty much correct. He had a company with another individual that was working on anti-grav free energy vehicles for the regular person. So instead of owning a motor vehicle that's running on a bunch of batteries or oil, you would have a free energy anti-grav vehicle. And so he was working on that. And, based on where he was 2 weeks before that, was made to look like he removed himself from the earth. He self-deleted. He had been looking fine. And then also, if you look at the picture of the guy and listen to it, it doesn't look like him. And I know people that have met him personally, and doesn't look like they insist that's not him. So with that being said, I don't think it was him, because on Air Force One, when you see Trump asked something by the mainstream media, it's a setup. They were given those questions so Trump can respond. And so he said, was asked about the missing scientist. Was he aware? And he said, yes. And were you going to do anything? Yes, we'll look into it, which means they already have looked into it. Just like, when back in the day in Ukraine, they said, we're going to deliver this missile or that missile, it means they already have. So in this case, it means they already have looked into it and they've already taken action on it, which means they've taken to removing people into protective custody or into the witness protection program, which is very expensive to do and very requires some very top level operatives and things like that. But he was that important, so I think that is a very likelihood. What we're watching is something very akin to Atlas Shrugged, if you've seen that movie, in which I think, what was the main guy's name? Can't remember the main character in there. I'm terrible for names today. I'm tired. I pulled something in my leg 2 days ago, and it's still hurting, and it makes it a little difficult to sleep in
Oh gosh.
the day before yesterday. It did last night was good, but so I'm a little tired still trying to get caught up. But John Galt, I knew if I get my talk something about something else, I would remember John Galt. So John Galt was getting scientists disappeared one way or another, suicide themselves, disappear, go off into the countryside, whatever. And he built a hidden facility, I think hidden behind holograms, if I remember the movie. And in that, he was, because they had the world was in kind of like a Green New Deal where the price of gas was like, $600 a gallon or something, and absolutely insane that only a very few people could afford to drive at all, And so he was solving that problem, and all these scientists were being disappeared by him and a group of other scientists that were helping him. And so it's really a great movie, and I agree with that. It's very likely we're looking at the same scenario. There's also 12 missing scientists in China. And of course, the alliance, just like the deep state, goes everywhere. So I feel that they're disappearing people in one method or another and getting ready to, and they've been doing that a long time. It just happens to be the high-tech scientists right now. And, there are a couple from MIT on the East Coast, quite a few that worked at Area 51, I believe. And they have a whole lot in common. In other words, if you look at their backgrounds, there's 4 at one place, 4 at another, 2 at another. Same thing goes in China. So if you research the background of the scientists, it becomes really, really obvious. And so the interesting thing will be if we see this, like with Princess Diana and JFK Jr. and Michael Jackson and all these people that I feel could have been in that same situation, not because they're scientists, but they were disappeared to protect them. All these people started coming back. It would be really wake up the mainstream people. They would be like, "What? Yes, I Michael Jackson," and I'd be much older, and then I'm JFK Jr., I'm Princess Diana. It would be awesome. So that is my take on as well. I agree with Kerry that due to his company and the research of what he was developing, I don't know if he had a vehicle to back engineer, but it's not impossible. And he had a lot of insiders in the day, so he very well could have. So, I don't feel him as a person that would self-delete at all. So anyway, he was in good health. Yeah, he talked about, he found out he was Mark Ultra and they did all these things to him and all that. I don't think that's him. And I don't think that's the case with him either. So anyway, that's the answer to that question.
Yeah, that was. And as far as like the disclosure thing, do you think they're ramping up to like release some kind of major disclosure? I mean, it seems like they keep like teasing us with it. Like if you watch X, like they keep saying Trump's going to release the UFO files, and then it'll be like any day now Trump's going to release the UFOs. We keep hearing it over and over again, and I'm like waiting. I don't know if what we're going to get is going to have redactions in it, or what's going to be. I mean, what do you think about that? Like, do you think yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be the same exact way they did the Epstein files. So if you remember, Trump came back. Are we still talking about that? Well, not exactly the same. In this, he said, yeah, I believe in it just recently. And so they will go and, you have certain people, senators mentioning it, like the hybrid program, and saying, that was Matt Gaetz saying that he knew that their hybridization with aliens and humans. And he met a guy at Crestview, which is interesting because Crestview's on the dumb on the above ground area. It's exactly on the tunnel system that goes from Eglin Air Force Base to Redstone Arsenal and goes through several other big dumb facilities. And so Crestview is a lot of, I believe underneath that is a hub. It hubs out right there. And so there's likely a small hub center where they're doing or transferring or actually doing possibly some hybridization right there in Crestview. And you have a lot of high-end operatives, more than a few in Crestview, even though it's a very small town. I think one main road and not much there, but it is right on that line. And then so the disclosure will come out, like that statement. Then, of course, the vice president came out and said it's all demons. Then it'll come out. Okay, we have demons, we have fallen angelics, Nephilim, we have regular angelics, we have interdimensionals, we have extraterrestrials, we have interterrestrials, we have crypto-terrestrials, we have hybridization, we intradimensionals. So like the Yeti, which are actually not from Earth. They're like they call them, the Native Americans call them the star people. They're another one of the star people group, and so they come from another dimension and come down in. Well, I don't know, say down, but to Earth. They come to Earth. For various reasons, to get various things, and they're very peaceful and gentle, and that's why they never find bones or anything but a few tracks here and there. So that is actually, not for most people, they wouldn't look at that as extraterrestrial or non-terrestrial. They think they're from here, but they're not. And so there's that disclosure of all of this will come out like drip, drip, drip. So it'll come out, okay, we have, since 47, and even before that, the main one was I think it's Robert Pignotti talked about this they retrieved a downed craft during the war. The NAZIs did in Italy, and it was taken to Florida, and then it was taken to Area 51 and through Wright-Patterson. And so to look at it, so different groups could start working on, certain components of it to back engineer it. And so there is that, far back that we've been getting craft. And of course, the Roswell in 47, along with quite a few other craft at that time as well. And then you have the Battle of LA and, all of that, which was a mothership, which was, obviously a good ship. They didn't really try to fire back or anything. So you have all kinds of things that will be coming out. Disclosure, they may disclose about the Battle of LA, the Roswell, the craft in Italy, all of these things. But it will come out in little pieces at a time. And it's, like Epstein, it's terabytes of information. And then additionally, you'll have craft, and you'll have go about the abduction program, which the majority, it's not 100% like David Greer says. I don't agree with that. Is the mankind types back engineered craft, their program to start tending the waters so they could do Bluebeam, Project Bluebeam, an alien invasion. And so they do abductions. Yeah, they've been abducting. They did that in the movie 4th of July, where I'm back, and you abducted me and this, and I'm back. And the guy, that sacrificed himself to take down the first ship. And so that's.
You mean Independence Day? Was that it?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Independence Day. Yeah, sorry. Independence Day.
That was a good one.
July. Yeah. Thank you for the correction. So this is will be revealed that a lot of these abductions over all these decades were, engineered, hybridized and engineered beings done by the deep state by about probably 90+%. Because, for the most part, it's true that if a species comes light years to get here, and they can get here in the blink of an eye, from hundreds of light years, thousands, millions, billions of light years, they could take out the Earth in a blink of an eye too. And they've actually, the alliance, which is now being talked about in Congress, the Guardian Alliance, the Galactic Alliance, are being talked about by members of Congress. That so you can see it starting to come out, and that they have been saving our hide for quite a while. We were going to have a nuclear war in the 90s, and they, turned all the warheads into gold worldwide. And so the whole US and the Soviet Union had to rearm. They started to rearm, but the Soviet Union, built some weapons, and then those were encased, a lot of those were encased in lead and taken into Iran and other places, and hidden away. And then the Soviet Union came to an end, and the U.S. did rearm along with the Chinese. But the Chinese now, it turns out, since that time, a major part of their nuclear force has fallen to grift. So it turned out that the fuel is water, the warheads are water, or just
Whoa.
just lead, or just some bunch of junk in there. There's enough, just enough to make it the right weight. So it's turned out that about over 80% of their nuclear arsenal doesn't exist. It's just a bunch of, it reminds me of an op that happened during World War II, where the Germans built a fake air base, for the British to come in and bomb, so they could shoot the British down. And it was built out of balsa wood. The planes were balsa wood and paper mache and that stuff. So the British came over with one plane at night and dropped a paper mache bomb because their intel found out, right? So we're seeing all kinds of things where the fake stuff will be coming out, plus the real stuff will be coming out, plus the real space program they'll come out about the truth about the Space Force and all that. They've been dropping little hints, like way back about 6 years ago, there was a advertisement for the Space Force. And, before that, even for the Air Force, before they had the Space Force. And a guy was in the commercial was saying, I love our fighters, and I love the Air Force, and I love our fighters, and I love our spaceships. So then they pull it 2 weeks, just like the medbeds. Trump puts out a post, then he pulls it. So it's tending the waters and getting it known to people, to bring it into their point of view, and then to get the average people to demand to see it, like he did, like the Alliance did with the Epstein files, where Trump said, "Oh, we're still talking about that. That's not real." And everybody gets really upset, and Elon says, "Well, it's because he's in on it." And then they demand to see it. So it'll be very similar. Well, they'll get the people interested in one way or another. Trump may say some crazy stuff again and get people really, really upset, demand to see it. We want to see the files. We want to see the UAP files, UFO files. We want to see it all. And it'll get the demand's so large and then you'll have a regular everyday person, like with Nick Shirley coming out with, the corruption and the grift and that, where that's not really he was being fed that information. He didn't just happen on that. The FBI fed him all that, because you got to make it look like it's the regular people for the regular mainstream. Otherwise, they'll say Trump's a dictator and he's doing lawfare and all of this, and he's doing all these psyops and all that. And he's going to take over the world and blah, 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 like they do. So that's where we're sitting with all those. Back to you, Rob.
Yeah. And another interesting thing that we have that is going on is the MK Ultra hearings, which is I never thought we would see this. This is I don't know what prompted this. Do you have an opinion on this? It's interesting, right? It's like out of nowhere they just decided to have an MK Ultra hearing, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't know if they're going to have people like Kathy O'Brien testifying or anything like that. But do you have a take on that or an opinion? I
haven't had enough time to really look into it yet. There was trials on Mark Ultra way back, decades ago, and they said, okay, we've disbanded this, doing that anymore, and we're not doing that. No, they just changed the name around to something else, just like in the movie the Bourne movies, where they just changed the name of the programs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. What about underground base? I know you've researched underground base extensively. Do you have any news on anything on the DUMBs, or and I was wondering, the DUMB, do they have the DUMBs all the way in Israel and Iran too? Do they stretch all over the world, would you say?
There's no country, and probably no even small island, that's not connected. It's that
Wow.
vast, the system. In every country, and especially the smallest country, the Vatican has a massive tunnel system and dumb under it. And they go all over the world. So
Wow.
one thing that ties to King Chuck to the king coming is with the beasts is and to the ballroom situation that was a white hat setup, of course, that attempted assassination. Pretty pathetic, but I guess for the mainstream, it's for the target audience, as Derek Johnson says, it looked real. Uh, this guy charges the security with a shotgun and some knives and another small gun, and it's like, really? That's really you expect to get through security like that? It's like no. And then only one officer, a lady, gets off 5 shots. He would have been Swiss cheese if that had been real. He would have been so full of holes that he'd look like Swiss cheese or a sponge, a red sponge on the floor, and he'd have been tackled to the ground at the very least. So it's there's no way that was not a setup by the White Hats, but it was to get the ballroom. We needed the ballroom. See, that's why we have to have the ballroom. We have to have a secure facility, and then of course. We have a senator, or was it a congressman? I forget. I can see his name. I'm terrible with names today. When I'm tired, I'm not great. Came out and said that underneath the ballroom there's military stuff. So definitive. The military stuff. What he's referring to is there's a jump gate as well as many other, dumb tunnels. The whole White House's tunnels. There's regular tours. They show you some tunnels like where in the War of 1812 the British came in up underneath into the White House. There's a tunnel that they came up, and it came up through the floor in the White House, and they came out that way. So there's a tunnel system, of course, that goes to Congress and Senate and all over DC. And of course, way back when, with Linda Paris, showed a video with me on there of kids at night being taken out during Trump's first term. And then of course people know that the streets of DC flooded several times. They flooded it out to wash it out. It was really bad down there because they're just children's bodies, refuse laying everywhere. So they washed it out and flooded it out after they cleaned it up as much as they could several times. And the jump gate underneath the ballroom is actually tied to what is called the Beehive. And the Beehive is a series of huge underground dumps and facilities in the only state that is called the Beehive State, which is Utah. And so the Utah Beehive State connects to Area 51, to Groom Lake, to all of that. That's all part of what they call the Beehive. All of that, as well as Fort Huachuca down in Arizona, which was the largest, one of the largest dumps other than Redstone Arsenal. And those are all now cleaned out. And they're burning out Area 51 and doing earthquakes. There were 17 earthquakes, and they're cleaning that out and building new systems in there. The White Hats are. So that's now in process and being done. So back to you, Rob.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you believe that I don't know if I ever talked to you about this. Do you believe there might be like active like underground cities or like actual cities underneath the dumbs? Like I've often wondered this if like maybe it's like like when you start to go underground, you have the dumbs, and then underneath that you have either ET civilizations or maybe off-world humans that have kind of we hear a lot about Agartha and stuff like that, but maybe I don't know. Like, do you think there are people that have went off world and went underground, and ETs that are living under there as well, like full cities?
There's again, it's like the non-terrestrial question. You have extraterrestrials, interterrestrials, ultra-dimensionals, interdimensionals. So you've got all kinds. And so, like, for example, underneath the Golden Dome, which is in Mount Hayes, the main part of it, underneath that, deep down, is a city of giants, of very peaceful, loving giants. It also made it difficult for the deep state to try to take the Golden Dome. They interfered quite a lot. And the deep state was there so far down, the deep state couldn't get at them, and they had technology that they couldn't get through to. So you have that, and the Anshar has a city down there where they're in stasis now, and then there's the Mount Hermon where the 200 fell, and they built a city underneath it, and that's still there. They're not there; they're out roaming around the earth still. And then you have good beings and bad beings, like the you have the beings like in India with trunks that look like little elephants. I think they're called the Saros. They have a civilization underneath all of deep underneath of all the four corner states, which is Colorado, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico. Underneath all of that, going all the way out to Groom Lake, Area 51, all the way to LA, is way deep, is an ancient civilization that is still there. And they have powered their civilization by the deep black rocks that they found create massive electromagnetic fields in the bottom of the trenches. They found the little black rocks, little ones. And the Black Rock Pyramid that's in Mount Hayes, that the Golden Dome is in, the administrator, is one of those black rocks. It was carved into a pyramid. And so you have this massive underground civilization under those states, and the Native Americans know about it. You have the ant people, which are all over the place under the world. Like once they ended the bad ants that are non-terrestrial from Weeka Dex, I believe it is, in the Blue Octant, they took over their city in the Crestone mountain range in Colorado. The San Gabriel Cristos near Crestone in the great sand dunes area. And that's where all that sand comes from, is the ants. Like any ant pile, you got sand outside the front door, from all the tunneling. And so same thing there. And so because they say it's been blowing in from where? Going over what the La Garita mountain range, or the southern the southern peaks to the south, the southern oh my gosh, I can't even remember Colorado mountain ranges now. Pathetic today. But anyway, that whole thing's
Rockies, you mean? Is it the
well,
Rockies?
it's all part of the Rockies. You got mountain ranges in the Rockies. You got the Collegiate Range. You've got which are called the Collegiate Range because they're named after colleges like Harvard, Lincoln, Yale, Democrat, etc. You have the Sangre de Cristos. You have the La Garita Range, which are both in that same valley as the Great Sand Dunes. And then to the south, you have the southern part of the something mountain range. My mind's a blank. And you've got, quite a few. You've got the Front Range, of course, which is right above Denver, which has, several 14,000-foot peaks in it. The mountains of Colorado is a total of 54 14,000-foot peaks. So they're divided up in ranges going all the way across. And so even in, you've got, because they're so big, they divided up different parts. You got the Mosquito Range, you got the Flat Tops, you got all kinds of different ones. So, and there's dumps all over. So speaking of the Black Rocks, in the Front Range under Rifle, and also up in near the 14,000-foot peak of Longs Peak. There's deep under that, there's one of the Black Rocks. And then below that is this blue ice that's very, very powerful with the Black Rock together. And a lot of the deep civilizations and cities run on these power systems. So, and then of course, in the center of the Earth, the Earth is hollow, like all spheres generate that way. So if you take a sphere and it starts of liquid material, or that's condensing and becoming solid, or cooling and becoming solid, however, or it's getting cooled down in one way or another, it'll have a hollow core. And so if it has electromagnetic materials or radioactive materials or both, does create a gravitational field and a pressure wave at the center that opens up a hollow and also opens up the poles above it. So it becomes like electrodynamo, and you have a central sun composed of those magnetic materials and or the nuclear materials, and you'll get a low energy nuclear star or a plasma type of situation going on, depending on what type of fields you've got going on and what kind of quantum activity you've got happening. And so over the Arctic and the Antarctic, there's holes that go into the inner Earth. And then you have 12 continents on the inside where they state there's essentially the way it's actually not correct, but they say there's 7 continents on the outside. There's actually more, but they don't, it depends on how you look at it. So, there's lots and lots of underground civilizations as well as inside the earth, which, the Nazis did go down. Oh, darn, you're on YouTube. The NAZIs go down and hopefully I didn't get you a hit. Go down and met them and got just not actually down inside, but as you're on the way down from the Antarctic entrance, they got New Schwabenland built under a mountain in there, in one of the mountain ranges in Antarctica. And of course, under Antarctica, you've got ancient civilizations too.
I was just going to ask you about that. I was going to ask you, like, what role Antarctica plays in, like, the disclosure puzzle. Like, do you think it's really important? I know Brad Olson talks about it. He was, when I had him on, he was talking about the black goo that they got from there and stuff, and how that ties in. And there's a lot that's going on with Antarctica, right? See, like you said, there's an inner Earth like entrance there, and what all is going on with Antarctica? Would you say?
Well, you have the NACI base, the New Schwabenland, base 211, and you have several reptilian bases there. And then you have ancient bases of what they call the founder race, which are much larger. They haven't lost their stature like we did. We used to be much larger too, eons ago, but they're still have a fairly large stature of around 20 so feet tall that are down there. And many other civilizations, as well as the fact that you've got, the entrance exit for their craft from the Agarthans, the Shambhalans, the and other various civilizations that belong in the center of the earth on the 12 continents there. So, and those are interconnected through various tunnel systems and entrance points to the surface. So you have, like, in the Himalayas, an entrance through what is called the Valley of the Moon that they did in Lost Horizons. That entrance goes to inner Earth. You have an entrance through the Mammoth Cave system. You have an entrance through Shasta, and of course, the Arctic as well. And so Admiral Byrd went in twice, once from the Arctic and once from the Antarctic. Actually, his first time was in his diary is said that's from the Arctic, but the problem is that the aircraft and the dates are actually the time he went in the Antarctic, and so which takes a lot of sleuthing to figure that out because man, they made it confusing as heck. So you can't really find out what aircraft he was using in the Arctic expedition too easily. It gets confused with the one in the Antarctic as well. So anyway, back to you, Rob.
Yeah, one thing that's come up in the news lately is Cuba. Like, and like when Trump had his like press conference, he said something like in the lines like he's like, after we're done with Iran, we're gonna go take Cuba. Like, I don't know if you would agree. Like, I heard there's 3 major choke points, like oil choke points in the world. I don't know. That's kind of surface level stuff. Like that, like they say there's one in like where Venezuela. Then they said another one's in Greenland, and then I heard the other one's in the Middle East. But like, I don't know if that's true. And like, what would we, why do you think there's a deeper reason why Trump wants Cuba?
Well, to get into the Gulf of America, you either got to go above Cuba between Cuba and Florida, or you got to go below Cuba. And so it's a choke point. It kind of a two-way street or two streets going through, but two ways in or out. But it is a choke point. Straits of Hormuz is kind of obvious, and of course the Rock of Gibraltar going through the that entry point at the Rock of Gibraltar into the Med. That is a really small choke point. It's not very wide, and the amount of craft going through there at any time is massive. So when I went through in a submarine, it was, we had an emergency. And so after we got through, we couldn't come up while we were going through because you just got so many ships that, if you look at how many contacts you have with a contact coordinator in the control room, you got groups. You just have groups that are labeled as a single contact unless something big breaks from them or a group breaks apart, because you can't delineate how many are in that one area. And so, as we came through, you had to, ask the lead solarman, where do they come up to get to periscope depth to be able to clear the problem? Because they needed to get air into the ship and put up the snorkel mast. So it's like, we're in a problem. We can't get up right now. And so when you have to get clearance to in-chop, even as a submarine, and you have a certain depth you have to stay at and a certain heading and a certain area you go in, and they have one way in, it's like, straight. This is way in, that one that way on the other side is on the way out. And it's same for the surface ships. And so it is probably one of the tightest choke points that there is. And then, there's quite a few others, of course, the Suez Canal and others like the, Panama Canal, those are choke points. But and of course, going around, it's not so much as obvious a choke point, but it does relegate some difficulties as going around the Cape of Good Hope and the Cape of Good Horn. So, going around the tip of South America or the tip of Africa. And in the old days, a lot of ships, because the waters where the oceans meet become really rough because you got different salinity, different temperature. And so a lot of ships are down there, especially the old sailing ships, where they, took a lot of lives and a lot of ships now. So back to you, Rob.
This is so interesting. How long were you on a submarine for? But did you ever see anything weird? Like when you were down there? Like, did you? I mean, can you see? Are there windows? Like, can you look, like when you're under the water? Are there like windows you can look out? And did you ever see all kinds of weird stuff? Like, I mean, like because where I'm going with that is like, there's reported like alien bases supposedly under the water that we can't see. I mean, did you? And beyond that, did you ever see any weird kind of like big sharks or anything like? Yeah, I'd love to hear it. I mean, that sounds so cool that you were on a submarine. I never asked you about that. That's really cool.
Yeah. So, submarines are solid metal. Most of them are solid steel. In the day I was in, it was HY80, which is about over an inch thick solid steel.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that's the pressure hull. And then you have an outer hull and the inner hull. And, then you have tanks and things around to submerge the ship, the ballast tanks and those things. And there's no way to look out, although we do have what's called a window. It's called the sonar window. And it's a material, usually like fiberglass or a certain type of metal that sound can go through. It's usually fiberglass, so on the nose of the ship. And so that's the sonar window because it's transparent to sound. So you can hear through there. And in sonar and in the control room, you have, of course, sonar, you have stacks they call them stacks or sonar systems that listen through the sonar array at the front of the ship. And then I also have, if you look on the back, you'll see what looks on the top of, sometimes it's off on a sailplane. Sometimes it's on the side of the ship. Sometimes it's, depending on the ship and the country, you'll see a tube. And that deploys a towed array that goes out, quite a long distance behind the ship. It limits, how steep you can turn, how quick you can turn. Because if you turn towards, away from the array too sharp, your propellers can cut through the array, and you can cut the array off. So you got to pull in the array if you're going to do high end maneuvering. And so they have in sonar, you can go and put, the headsets on and listen. And they also have displays that analyze the sound, and you have those. And then they also have in control room speakers that you can listen. And so I've been at sea on 5 different submarines. If you add up the days just underwater, I'm not talking about surface transit. You get sometimes where, like I said, there's so many ships in an area, you will have to surface the ship and run surface. So diesel submarine, my first submarine, we did that a lot, especially in bad weather. When you're in about above a state 3 sea where the waves are 15, 20 feet, and you need to charge batteries every now and then, and you got to charge up the battery and you put up the snorkel mast. If the waves get too big and the ship's going down through the wave for too long, like any snorkel, you have a thing a valve, a head valve that'll, like when you're snorkeling, it has a valve that shuts so you don't have water coming down the pipe into the people tank, into the engines in this case. So they won't flood out engines, for that's their intake for their air. And so if it's too big, it shuts the valve for too long and it pulls more than a 4-inch vacuum. You have an automatic shutdown relay that will shut down the engines at 4 inches vacuum. So that, it's rough because your ears will be poppity 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 when it shows the poppity 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 when it opens. And we actually had one of the cooks, we had to come back because he had a lung collapse. The valve didn't shut down and went to a 6-inch vacuum, and they hit emergency shutdown, and it collapsed one of his lungs. They had to come back and get him off the ship because it collapsed one of his lungs. And so, yeah, and if definitely, and you have a lot of them in that part of the world, between Japan and Philippines and Taiwan, you got a lot of hurricanes. And so you have hurricanes where you have a state 5C where the waves are 60, 100 feet tall sometimes. And I stood up on the bridge in those, as watch on the bridge, and you're strapped in. Because if the ship goes down, in this case, it's not just a wave going over the ship. The ship will come up over the top of a wave, and the entire ship will almost come airborne as it falls off the top of the wave. And so when it goes down through the next wave, the ship's got about a 50-degree down angle, and it goes through the bottom of the wave, and it'll go up to 150, 200 feet down in a second. I mean, just instantly. And you got fish flying by. Now you can see fish and seaweed hanging in your hair and your head and all over it. Fish flopping in the up on top of the sail where you're standing watch on the bridge. And then you come zoom. And of course, if you have to snorkel in that, even in that, you can bust the sail. You can bust the snorkel mast, not the sail, but the snorkel mast. And usually you lower most of your mast and antenna because you can bust an antenna or a mast. And so it's rough. And so you got a surface for that if you're needing to snorkel. Or again, you may have requirements that somebody's down there and you need to come up. And so the Pacific is in that area has a lot of hurricanes. And so I've done quite a few hurricanes on the surface on a diesel submarine. But on the nuclear submarines, you don't have to, because they can charge their batteries all the time. They don't run on the batteries, they run on nuclear power. They have batteries just in case for the engines. You have a single battery well, not like diesels. They have a double battery well or more sometimes, depending on the submarine and the country. So having been underwater for 12 years, there's more days at sea than that because I don't count the surface time. And so I have 12 years underwater. So literally to the point where by listening, being in control, and where there's always a speaker, or being, in other areas where there's always a speaker so you can hear the water, I can tell you anywhere I am on Earth within 3 seconds by putting my head under the water out in the ocean anywhere. You could take me out in the ocean anywhere on Earth and put my head underwater for 3 seconds and let me listen, and I'll tell you where I am. And
whoa, that's so cool that you can do that.
And not just that I'm in the Pacific at the Atlantic. I could tell you we're in the North Pacific, or the North, we're off the coast of Okinawa, or we're off the coast of Japan, or we're off the coast of Hawaii, or we're just outside the Golden Gate, or we're off the coast of Greenland, or we're near Tasmania, or we're near New Hebrides, or we're in the Mediterranean. So I can do that because every ocean, every place in every ocean, the shipping is unique, but also the what we call biologics, which are whales all the way down to shrimp and other small creatures. They have unique sounds. So all your whale pods don't sound anything like each other. So if you have a whale pod of orcas, killer whales, off the coast of Japan, they don't sound like the killer pods off of the coast of Okinawa, nor do they sound like the ones in the Atlantic, nor do they sound, so they sound completely different. And there's certain types of fish and things that don't exist but in one ocean. So you've got a fish that exists only in the Atlantic, and you have fish that only exist near the Hawaiian Islands, and they have unique sounds, so you know what they sound like. And you also know if you're near land or you're way far away from land, because the reefs and things have their own sound, and you can hear the waves besides that. And so you get really, really good at hearing, and actually your ears get better than eyes, essentially. So you can hear things, and you also get to where you can hear the difference between ships. So I could say I'd listen, go into sonar, I'd put on the headsets, for example, or in the control room, and I'd hear the speaker, and I'd go, sounds like a Charlie, or sounds like a Victor 2, or sounds like an Echo, or that sounds like a whiskey, or an, and I would be able to say, oh, that's a Charlie 2, 20,000 yards out, port 40 angle on the bow at 040 degrees true, and making 15 knots, and his reactor is running at step 8.
Whoa.
Yeah, by hearing the gears and the engines and all of that, and all the sounds that you get used to of what those ships sound like. I'd say that's the Midway. He's windmilling one of his 4 screws. He's doing 120 on 3/4. It's windmilling because one blade on the 4 blades on the screw that's windmilling is damaged. So he must have hit something, so or you could, submarine right away, because a submarine, what's called cavitation, is when a propeller's turning in the water, you hear that shh. Well, that's surface cavitation. The bubbles are big, and they do a sound like they're big, like shh. But when it gets small bubbles, because you're down deep in the pressure and they turn the screw suddenly too fast, it pulls air out of the water, and when it breaks, the bubbles break, they go back in. It's compressed cavitation, small bubbles, and it's like, and you'll hear like that sound. And so that tells you have a submarine. And then, of course, you get to where you do ops with, the fleet, and, you're the bad guy, you're the submarine, the Soviet submarine they're trying to find, or whatever, the Chinese submarine. And you hear them, and, your job is to sink the aircraft carrier. So you want to run through the different pattern, all the patterns that the surface fleet uses, and you run through their screens, and you go up and you shoot a flare up on the deck of the flight deck, right? And so, I would be able to tell you what ships, what cruisers, what everything. I mean, just by listening very quickly. So yeah, it is interesting, and it's also very demanding. It's extremely demanding, and it's not for everybody. There has been on my first submarine a guy that shot his foot with the 45 to get off because he had claustrophobia, and he couldn't take it. Yeah. And so, this is when I was first in, and I was standing topside watch from 4 to 8, and my chow relief came up so I could go eat breakfast. And I went down, and at about 4 o'clock in the morning, I actually took watch. You take at 3:30, you get off at 7:30. And so at about 3:45, I look up on the bow of the ship, and they have this big thing that's looks like a big round piece of steel. They call it the bull nose, and the lines come through there for the number one line. And he had a big, huge sledgehammer and a big, huge butcher knife, and he had it on his foot. And he was getting ready to drive it through his foot. And I came up behind him and took it away from him as he raised up the hammer. He took it up behind him, away from him. What are you doing? And he goes, I can't take it. I can't take it. I need off. This will prove to them I'm serious. They don't believe me. I can't do it. And I said, I will make sure you get off. I'll tell them what you were just doing, and you were serious, and you were by yourself and didn't know anybody would see you. And I did, because I pay attention when I watch. Sit there until I get relieved, and just relax and stay up here and enjoy it up here. And I'll go down and tell the oncoming officer of the deck, the captain, the XO, and the medical officer, you can't take it. And why? And why I know that so. So, I got relieved to go to breakfast, and I'm sitting eating breakfast. And of course, another guy had relieved me, and you turn over your 45 and, all your extra clips and everything. And I'm sitting eating breakfast, and here comes my chow relief in. I'm like, how are you not on watch? What are you doing here? And the guy, I got relieved. By who? And it was the guy that was trying to drive the blade through his foot. I go, you gave him a 45 with bullets? Oh, my word. I just jumped up and ran over the top of the table and knocked dishes all over. And I got to the after battery hatch and just put my first hand on the ladder to go up, and I hear kaboom. Oh, no. I go up, there's this, in port in the Philippines, this little Filipino guy's hiding behind the door to the sail that's open, and he's shaking. He's just pointing and talking in Tagalog, which I spoke. And so I go, it's okay. No problema, walang problema. And so I just go over, and it's a guy sitting on the brow, the walkway that comes from the pier to the ship, and we had two huge big pieces of wood it was sitting on, and he was sitting there with a 45 up, pointing up, and it was smoking. And I go, what did you do? And he looked down at his right foot, and he had put, fortunately, the 45 touching the chute, and then pulled the trigger. So the bullet went straight through. It didn't shatter everything as if you shot from a foot away and blown his foot off.
Yeah.
So he said, now they'll believe me. I told you I would get them to believe you. Yeah, you're going to be going to court-martial because destroying government property. Your government property. Now your career's done. You're done. Your foot's messed up for life. I mean, oh my gosh. Why couldn't you just sit there like I told you? Give me the gun. Okay, I cleared the gun, check it, count my bullets, all that stuff. Then I said, and then I immediately, after I clear the gun as quickly as I can, I go to the 1MC because the captain had already come down, medical officer and captain to topside immediately. This is on the 1MC. So yeah, submarines are interesting, And then on another submarine, my second submarine also, the next one right away, not on my crew. There's two crews on SSBNs. You have a blue crew and a gold crew. And each one has the ship for 3 months at a time. And the ship goes out of Guam, but you fly from Hawaii to Guam to pick up the ship. And you turn the ship over and do sea trials and a few things like that. Well, on the other crew than mine, they have a chief petty officer that was named Hogan. And the messenger of the watch went to wake up Hogan and put his hand in, to his bunk, and it was wet and warm, wet. And in berthing, it's rigged for red, so, you can sleep with your eyes closed. It looks dark. It's a dark red light. And so he goes out into the main part of the goat lockers, they call the chief's lock, where all the chiefs are. There's a little table in there and stuff, and his hand is, in his whole body, front of his body is covered in blood. And he's like, he screams and runs out. And they go. And so Hogan had couldn't take it either. And so what he had done, I think it was because his wife left him, and with another person in his the other crew, the opposite crew and all of this. So he committed suicide. He cut his neck open and put his hands in and pulled it down to make sure, he wasn't kidding. And so you can't come in on an SSBN. You're on patrol. You're out there to shoot your missiles if it goes to nuclear war. You don't get in unless that ship just can't stay at sea. Well, you can stay at sea with somebody dead. You put them in a body bag and you put them in the freezer. So they put him in the freezer in a body bag, and forever on both crews. Anybody who went to make a breakout in that freezer didn't want to go into a part of the freezer called Hogan's Alley. I want to go over there. There's parts haunted in there.
Oh God, that's scary. That's freaky. That's, man, holy shit. This is like, even a woman in the audience said this is so interesting to hear about. I mean, it's horrible that happened to that guy, but I mean, this is all very interesting to hear. Like, this is a question I have for you, Gene. Like, what is your thoughts on this whole, like, I mean, I know we can look at it from like a 3D perspective, we can look at it from a spiritual perspective, or what's going on behind the scenes, but like with the whole Strait of Hormuz, because like what you just said, it's like the United States, we have aircraft carriers, like submarines, like we have like the best military in the world. Do you think Iran is, or the, not Iran, we know it's the IRGC that's like the evil part of Iran. Like, do you think the IRGC has been somewhat tricky in a way where they've had shit like hidden underground? Because it seems like they're hitting like stuff like some of the like the Gulf Coast states, like the like UAE and Qatar and all that. They're kind of hitting those, and like so do you expect this war to last long, or do you think like this won't be dragged out that long?
No, I don't think it's. I mean, how long can they hold out? They've lost almost. They're down to their small, what they call a mosquito fleet. There's like little motorboats to to mess with the ships going through. I mean, they can create damage and probably board a ship and pirate it. It's been done before, but most of their fleet's gone. Most of their military's gone. All their bases are gone. All their DUMs are gone. Most of their military's gone. I think we're down into the fourth level of the mullahs and the leaders who might be a leader, have been a leader, or dead. There's not a lot left. Plus the fact we've already passed it, so I'm not exactly sure what they're doing. It's probably rupturing and losing a lot of their oil fields. Because their oil, when you drill, and this drilling was done decades ago, and you sunk pipe to bring up the oil, and then you're pumping the oil up. Well, that pipe ages. And so if that pipe, and there's a pressure down there and it builds, if you're not pumping, that pressure is going to build and it'll rupture that pipe. And that pump is dead. You cannot use it anymore. And so eventually you'll shut down the entire field and it'll start to leach up through the broken pipes into the sand and create a tar pit. And then your whole oil field is done. And that date, I believe, was May 2nd. That they had to pump, or pipes would start rupturing. So that's likely already happening. And I don't know by now how catastrophic it is. We're a few days in, but eventually it's going to take their oil fields completely out. So, yeah. So their deadline date isn't just imposed by Trump. It's imposed by the physics of oil fields and pumping oil. And once you drill into them and you put in pipe. So now that that's done and we're past it, they're losing, parts of their oil fields, and eventually it'll be all of their oil fields because the pipes are old. And I'm not an expert on drilling for oil. I was never in that field, but you might be able to drill back down in there. I don't know, but you're going to be in a tar pit in a lot of the areas. So it's going to be a big problem for them. And, additionally, Trump's warned them that he doesn't want to blow them off the earth or into the dark ages, but, in the Stone Age, but he will. He wants the people to, have their country still intact reasonably, but they can't last that long. They can't. It's not a matter, they won't come to the table. It's a matter of economics and physics. So it is what it is. If they lose those oil fields, to re-drill and all that stuff, that's going to take time, even if you can. So there's a lot of limitations going on here that most people may not realize. And so they're under a time constraint that's pretty hardwired into the nature of how things are. And so with that, yeah, go ahead. Back to you, Rob.
Oh no, that was It's interesting. Do you see anything like happening with like China and Russia and like and is and like in our partnership with Israel? Like I know I'm not a big fan of Netanyahu or like what some of the actions of Israel, but like you know I don't know. I guess they're our ally in this war, you know. But I mean, would you see anything come like down the pike with like Russia and China and like a global thing, like a world war thing, or do you think?
Netanyahu's dead.
Oh, is he? Do you think he is dead or what?
Oh, he is dead. He
Wow,
was taken in a coma, and he didn't come out. He died.
wow.
Yep. So
Do you think he was? Do you think he was influencing us? Do you think Do you think they have
no,
that kind of power?
no, he was run by the same Jesuit, UK, whatever you want to call it, House of London, as was Iran, as was Ukraine, as was
Yeah,
as were we.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. So no,
That's it. Yeah.
and so
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah. So what with the situation with Russia? Of course, Europe is just baiting Russia like crazy, and they're trying to build military with, they don't really have much of an economic or military industrial system anymore after all that they've gone through with Ukraine and all the funding and all of the stuff with the Green New scam and shutting down their nuclear reactors and all that stuff. They're not very viable, especially Germany and France. They're pretty much gone from some of the major powers of Europe to pretty much not able to do much at all in that area. And so they can't really mount an offensive, but they can make they do have, of course, France and UK and others have nuclear weapons. So they could, say, get a near death event, near black swan event, as it's called, like the Cuban Missile Crisis standoff. And I do think it's probably the dark hats are going to do it, and the white hats will let it go to like the Cuban Missile Crisis just near the last moment, and they'll stop it. So because there's certain type of people on Earth, there's only one of two ways to wake them up, and sometimes it takes both.
Yeah,
They got to look death in the face to get them out of their complacency of, I got my yacht and I got my cars and I got my mansion and I got my little house in the mountains or out on the beach, or I got everything, and I don't care what's going on in the world. Doesn't matter to me. Epstein, I don't care. And the files, I don't care. And I got to jab my children. I don't care. And I got to do this. I got to do that. I don't care. As long as I have my barbecues and my resort stuff and all this stuff, they don't care. And
yeah,
so the other way, their bank account goes to zero. Everything they own goes. They have no money, no stocks, no nothing. It's all gone in the blink of an eye, like in 1929. That's why Trump posted that little movie of 1929. It all goes away in the blink of an eye. That wakes them up, because now the little houses in their house and their yachts and their things, they don't own them anymore. They're all gone. All the ownership deeds, titles, everything gone. They're freaking out of their mind, like 1929, jumping out of high buildings, And so,
yeah,
yeah. So, and then sometimes it'll take both to do that. So it may come to both at the same time. A black swan event with an economic collapse, and then it'll all come back after the appropriate amount of time, which is the white hats know. I don't know what that is. They've gamed this out on a super AI. So how long? It can't be too long, or the black hats will take it and win. It
yeah,
can't be too short, or the point never is made. And so it
yeah,
has to get to the point where it wakes up all of those people you can wake up. There's 3 to 8% you can't wake up, but the rest of the people got to go. It's got to get so bad, they will go never, ever again. And it may be different in different countries. The US may not be economically broke, bankrupt, all the banks has collapsed, the stock market, all of that, as long as, say, Europe or the Australia or those places. They might, especially the UK, it might take quite a bit longer there. But again, it can't be too long. There's a certain interval which they've gamed out and they know what that is. So, yes, I do believe that not only is that likely to happen, it's pretty darn likely because I don't think there's any other way that it can be done. I don't see how else. I know certain people like that they're not going to believe anything until it's the stark reality has terrified them of what they're living through. They don't change until it's so bad. They will do anything to make it get better. They will do anything that they can to make it never happen again and to make it stop. And so that's unfortunately the nature of a lot of people on Earth now. There's, not as many people as people think on Earth, but for the majority of human beings and mankind, especially mankind, that's how it is. They're not going to do a darn thing until it's too painful and they can't take it. So back to you, Rob.
No, this was great. We went a decent amount of time. Oh, one more thing I wanted to ask you about was when we used to do shows with Indy, and we talked about, I know she's really about the going against the radical Islam, about like, and she's kind of proved that it could be a threat, and it seems like there's people like Tommy Robinson who speaks out against it, and that's going on in the UK. And do you feel like that's a threat, like with sleeper cells here and like the mass immigration? It seems like Trump was trying to clear out the immigration, but like, do you see that as like something that like would be a potential threat still, or what do you think about that?
Again, they could use that. The White Hats could use that a little bit. Again, they can't use it too much, especially within the US, or you create a civil war. And they also have infiltrated all of those cells, all of them. They've infiltrated just like the Black Hats did back in the day. The White Hats have infiltrated everything, and they know everything, and they have the Golden Dome technology can take every piece of information on Earth, whether it's through anything in the internet or even just old style walkie talkies or any kind of transmission at all. And even knowing these cells, it can map out where they are and listen on their conversations wherever they are. Doesn't matter. With all the stuff that's being sprayed and the nanotech and the jab,
Yeah.
all of that, they can listen into the thoughts with people who are jabbed or shedded on enough. So, I mean, there's no secrets at all. And so, it's like when, they say the pipe bomber, they didn't know, January 6th, they knew that person. Every city's got so many cameras, it's beyond belief, let alone all that other tech. So, same thing with the guy coming towards the building with a shotgun. They know that before he's even there. So the tech that is out, people don't realize it's already there. You know, it's like, they're saying they're taking out the mines with these super powerful, really advanced underwater kind of drones in the Hormuz. No, they're not. The Golden Dome took them out with plasma already.
Wow.
Yeah, so with plasma balls, like you saw with MH370, where they moved MH370. So it has that technology, and that technology can move craft, it can move stuff, it can monitor stuff, it can monitor conversations, it can monitor what I'm saying right now in this room. It's going out over the airways, even if it weren't. They know who I am and where I live. I'm sure both sides, and they can monitor everything. They can my heart rate, what I'm doing, where I'm at. You know, even if I've been shit on enough, they can monitor thoughts, all of that. So even if you didn't get the jab, there's shedding that occurs. So if you're in
Yeah.
a major city, which I am, then yeah.
What my last question for you is: you did a show with Nino Rodriguez on spiritual warfare. I don't know if you guys touched on this, but like entity attachments. Like, do you see because of like what you just talked about the shedding? Do you think people become more magnetic to like interdimensional entities in a way?
Depends on if you do protocols to alleviate that in you, which I do. So that the shedding may not be to where they can do that with me. And also, it depends on what type of person you are,
Yeah,
because the technology and all that, for it to be utilized, you have to feed it the energy, and you have to not be too far in your ascension.
yeah,
If you're very far along in your ascension and already um, we have studies with the Jesus Christ invocation, for example, that show microscope under a microscope proof that that destroys the nanotech and the graphene and all this stuff. So if you're using those kind of things, protocols and different things as well, then it's that won't affect you. But if you're a person that's violent, um, or angry, or vengeful, or mean, or nasty, if you're also tending to pollute your body a lot, like you're an alcoholic or a drug addict, or and things like that, depends. All of that pollution or mental, physical pollution that's going into the body drops your vibrations, and it
yeah,
requires low vibrations for that stuff to get in you. Even
yeah,
before all the tech, that to get possessed, you had to have some low vibrations situations for something to come in and possess you. It's just not going to just happen out of the blue, like
yeah, yeah.
like in the movie where the little girl was possessed by the devil.
Poltergeist was it Poltergeist
No, no,
or the Exorcist?
no. Way back in the day with the possessed by the devil, and then the two priests were trying to get the devil out of her, and uh, yeah, I can't remember anything today. I'm terrible. I'm too tired. There was, yeah, it was, I think Michael Oldfield did the music to it. Um, the Exorcist, the movie The Exorcist, and the little girl got possessed. Well, there had to be some dark something going on within that home and tying into the girl, bringing her vibrations down to the point where there was an opening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why I said that is because I've had like minor like well over the past couple of years I've had like attachments
Hmm.
and I've tried to figure out like well I don't know what it is. I've looked it up on everywhere and it seems like it's something that like tries to like feed off my crown and then so I gotta maybe talk to you about these protocols like like because like it might help me like I could be targeted though too because like like that could be a thing I don't know I know some people that come on my show are also targeted and I'll be I just I don't I've been trying to figure it out I don't know.
Hmm.
It's weird,
Yeah. So, that's why
but I mean, I'm okay.
that's why I'm
So
very,
sorry. Go ahead.
it's why I'm very compassionate and very kind and respectful and considerate, not just because that's the nature of who I've groomed myself to be since my death experience. I told myself in God when I came back, I would clean myself up, and I have. And I don't drink and I don't smoke and I don't curse and I don't because I know all of those things can bring it in, especially if you're frequent, very vulgar, you speak a lot with a lot of emotion behind it. That brings it in. So if you have heavy emotions, also if you're not aware of your thoughts, your thoughts just run 90,000 thoughts a day and you're not really paying attention. And
Yeah.
have a lot of thoughts. So you have a good ego and a bad ego. And the bad ego will get in, well, I don't like her, and I don't like him, and I don't like that. And, she's too fat, or she's too thin, or wow, she's way more prettier than me, or he's really, I wish I had that, and he has that, and I should have that, and why don't I have that? And I don't like him because this. All this judgment and all this other stuff that brings your bad vibrations in. It brings down your energy structure, and that allows that stuff to get into you. So, even with the people that have, done stuff to you in your past, forgive them, and bless them. You'd be amazed when you bless them, you just like a rock is lifted off your head. It's like, wow, that's nice. I feel way better. And it doesn't come in, and you let all this stuff go from all your past, even back to your childhood when you were a little kid and all that. Just, okay, I'll let it go and all that, whether the person's alive or not. You let it all go and you bless them and, forgive them and all of that. And it's very, very, and then monitor your thoughts all the time, every
Yeah.
day. And then the last thing, which takes a lot of work, is to learn how to be lucid dreaming. And I've worked at that since 1974.
Wow.
Yeah. And so now I lucid dream to the point that the dream will be going and I'm awake. I've become awake and I'm completely awake. I'm still having the dream, and, I can steer and select dreams. I can pull dreams back from 30 years ago and pick up on the dream that's still running. People don't realize your dreams keep going, all of them. And so, I can pull those dreams back and see what the people in the dreams have been doing for the last 30 years. They may have great, great, great grandchildren by then, but, there's all this. So the lucid dreaming, I can be aware completely what's in the room. And at the same time, be completely exhaustedly asleep, like in in shore duty in Hawaii, and I was working on a submarine, and I had been working for it was needing to get underway. And I was working so hard for 3 days. I was exhausted. And we had in the shop I was in the shift I was running, I ran the night shift and it was daytime and I had to go through the day shift because somebody couldn't make it. So I went into the little lounge we had. It had no door. And I just laid down. I said, when it's time you get this, you got to do this, this, and this. When you get that done, come and get me. So I can go tell the captain the ship can get underway. I can check it, make sure, and, do the checkoffs and see if it's good. And then, all of that stuff. So the guy walked, a few hours later, and I've been up for 3 days. So I've been working hard. And so I'm not just, 72 hours behind on sleep. I'm also exhausted. My body's aching. I'm tired. So the guy walks in the lounge and I turned and I looked at him. I go, yeah, is it done? I didn't even say a word. You don't have to. I felt you come in. It's like, there's no door. I don't care. I heard you come through the doorway because I have an energy field that your energy fills the room. And when something cuts through that energy field, you feel it. So that's part of lucid dreaming is you feel the entire area around you. You feel everything. You're very sentient about what's going on around you. You know who's in the house, in the room, and what's in the room. So that kind of awareness will get to you to the point where if a low-level being, a low energy or demonic or anything is anywhere near you, you'll feel it. You'll feel it. Oh, this is not good. There's a XYZ. There's a Nephilim around that's shapeshifted, or there's a this or that. You'll feel it. You'll feel it right away. It's just like my wife's dog. She used to, would go crazy and just, have to have she's broken leashes before. When you get near people that have a lot of demonics on them, I call them darkies. They're swarming with them. She would just, we're heading home. We're out of here. Turn and just start she was half Siberian, so she put her legs apart and just start pulling. And, half Siberian, half Malamute. I'm in the Malamute half. They're stocky and powerful. They can pull heavy sleds. So she's just, and she's pulled me when I'm sitting on the concrete along the sidewalk. I can't stop her. I'm like, stop, wait a minute. So it's like, no, we're out of here. We're going home. These guys are nasty over here. So when you get that I know what just give me a minute, please. So they're very, very, you can become that aware. And, even getting to the point where this is an exercise I did in martial arts. So you can feel all life around you. So I would have a student, we go up in a forest, like an aspen forest, and you close your eyes and walk up to right next to an aspen tree and reach out your thumb and your finger your index finger, and put it around a leaf without touching it, and feel that you're holding the energy of the leaf without touching the leaf, and then open your eyes and see if you're correct. And so you can do those things. All those are possible. And so as you get that level of awareness and stuff, this stuff can't come in. The big thing is to start off with monitoring your thoughts. So, don't let your mind just run and run. Do daily meditations, where you don't think at all. You sit out and maybe start with a beautiful place in nature. Eventually, you should be able to do this in a trash heap, but in a beautiful place, and just don't talk about what you're seeing. Just smell, feel the air on you, the wind, the breeze, listen to the sounds, see the trees, feel and sense everything around you, and get to where you can, do that without thinking longer and longer and longer. And, then do it without just sitting in a room where you just close your eyes or keep your eyes open, and just open your eyes and stare, but not think anything. Just be quiet. And, maybe first some gentle, very spiritual music, but get to eventually where the sound of God's voice, the ek of the word creating physical reality, is what you hear. And that's it. You hear it, but you don't think anything. You're utterly quiet. So when you do that for long periods where you can get to where you can sit 5, 10, 15 minutes. At first it was difficult for me because I'd sit for a minute and I'd go, okay, we're being quiet. No, we just talked. Oh, darn it. Okay, we're going to be quiet now. Okay, let's be quiet. Okay, we're not going to think. Okay, we're not thinking. Yes, we are thinking, It's like, so, it's getting to the point where you become utterly, utterly quiet. And, of course, if you have good hearing, then it helps because you can hear your body, you can hear your heart rate, your breathing. You can literally just focus on your breathing in and out and your heart rate and all of that, and just get quiet and monitor yourself. And that will help you to, anytime something's trying to invade you or mess with you, or even whether it's the nanotech and you've been shed on and it's hacking in, you'll feel it. You'll feel thoughts coming into your head that aren't yours. And, to be honest with you, most people's thoughts, of those 90,000 thoughts, very few of those thoughts are yours. They're not. They're demonics. They're targeting, hacking into you, all kinds of stuff going on. And you're picking it all up and you're thinking it's your thoughts. So it's, what thoughts are yours? And that's why it's important to decide how you're going to think, what type of way you're going to think, and be very, so you're very kind and compassionate, and you have certain ways you think, and your patterns, and this. So anything that's not that, So, one way I do it is I become be very meticulous because of my martial arts background on how I do things, whether it's doing the dishes, taking a shower. I have a certain way. It sounds OCD, but by doing this, I know precisely when something is off because I stopped doing that. So like, okay, I do the silverware this way, I do the dish this way, I do the plates this way, I do the glasses this way, I do the cups this way, I oriented them in this way, I stack them this way. And anytime any of that changes, I know something's messing with me. And so when you're that way, you know where you put everything, how you put everything. Everything has a specific exact place. Anything that's off, you're doing things and you're not paying attention, and you still do it that way. But if you're doing things and you're not paying attention and you don't do it that way, something's interfering with you. And so that's a way to really get in control of yourself and head towards ascension, because you're very meticulous in who you are and how you are in every way, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And you don't let your emotions run rampant with you. So that takes a lot of control and years. That's my last thing I'm working on. I'm getting really close to, pretty much having my emotions at my control, instead of, you hear people say, you made me angry. They didn't make you angry. You chose to be angry by whatever they said or did, or the situation or whatever. Nobody makes you anything. You choose. And so it's realizing to take responsibility for everything about you, and stop blaming others. Maybe they're trying to get you angry. It doesn't mean you have to choose to do so. You can just say, okay, interesting. Thanks for the lesson. Okay, that's nice to know. And usually they, especially if it's demonic, they get very upset and leave because it's not working. And, they can't feed off your leash and all that stuff. So that's my advice in all of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. This has been an amazing show. We had a lot of people said a great stuff in the chat. Thank you, Gene. This was awesome. Do you want to tell people how they can follow you and stuff? And yeah, this was amazing. Thank you. This was awesome.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. So yes, let me pull up my website here briefly. And just gotta type up here. Very easy.
I put all participants. I put it so you could share or whatever.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so my website is genedecode.org. As you can see, it's here, genedecode.org on the finder up there, or the whatever you call that, the browser. And you can see it's $7 a month or $77 a year. So if you go for a year, you have $7 off of the entire year. It's like you don't pay for 1 year. There's a surface area where there's a lot of things in the surface area. So right now I'm logged in because it says log out, but this is what you would see if you were coming in, and you can, look around and view the surface catalog of a lot of free things in the website. And then all my public interviews and all of that, and research and things you can do. But if we go back inside, once you're inside the website, there's a lot of materials here. So when you see a number in the bottom right, like this is the Antarctica series, Introduction to Antarctica, the Remnants of Atlantis and Lemuria. That was a 5-part series, so there's 5 in that series. Once a month, near the end of the month, I do a Q&A. And so been doing that since the life of the website. So there's 42 there. Every other week I do news talk. So these are items. And then this is the surface area. You can see all of this is free. All of these items here are free. And you can see that I'm signed in, so you won't see it. If I was signed out, you'd see it. Then if you go to the bottom of the website, you see the dumb series down there. That's 7 in that series so far, because I'm redoing them all from back in the day. You can see my Rumble and my Telegram and my Truth Social. My social media, Telegram, Truth Social, is run by the Blessed for Service team. I don't have a social media footprint of my own. They do it for me, but you can click on that and it'll take you into that. That's Real Gene Decode on Rumble or on Telegram, Rumble, or Truth Social. So Rumble, you can see my Rumble. Somebody already had Gene Decode and the logo. So they stole my registered trademark logo. Someday I may get a lawyer and go after them because it's registered and trademarked. So, but I had to use Real Gene Decode. So all the interviews and stuff recent go up there. There's the one you're talking about, Nino. And then you can also go to my Blessed for Service website from down there, and that has all my interviews forever. Just about. There's a few that are missing that we can't find or I don't want there. So all the way back to B2T days and Kirsten W, the first ones.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And it has documents and resources for research. And it has my bio and all that stuff there, who we are and who I am and all that stuff. So that's where to find me.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Gene, for this was awesome. I really enjoyed this, and I thought this was really informational. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. And good night, everybody. Good night.